The morning sun cast long shadows across the cornfield when the ships arrived. Marcus Chen had been tending to his crops for 37 years, through droughts and floods, through market crashes and government subsidies. He'd weathered it all, with the same quiet determination that had kept his family's farm running for 4 generations. But nothing had prepared him for the massive obsidian vessels that now blotted out the sky above his modest farmhouse in Iowa. The ships hung motionless. For 3 days, their presence felt across every continent. World leaders held emergency sessions. Military forces mobilized. Scientists worked frantically to establish communication. Social media exploded with theories, prayers, and panic. But in the small farming community of Millbrook, life continued, with stubborn normalcy. Cows needed milking. Crops needed tending. The earth didn't stop turning just because visitors had arrived from another world. On the 4th day, the message came. Every screen on Earth, televisions, computers, smartphones, digital billboards, simultaneously displayed the same image. A towering figure encased in dark, angular armor. The being's face was hidden behind a helmet that seemed to absorb light itself, but when it spoke, its voice resonated with the authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. "Inhabitants of the 3rd planet," the warlord began. His words somehow translated perfectly into every human language simultaneously. "I am Thexvar the Conqueror, Supreme Commander of the Hegemony's 9th Fleet. Your species has been evaluated. Your technology is primitive. Your military capabilities are laughable. Your unity is non-existent." Marcus had been replacing a broken fence post when his wife Sarah called him in to watch. He stood in their kitchen, dirt still under his fingernails, as the alien continued his declaration. "However, your world possesses resources of value to the hegemony. Rare earth elements, abundant water, fertile soil. Most importantly, your species shows potential as a labor force, once properly domesticated." Sarah's hand found Marcus's arm, her grip tightening as the warlord's helmet tilted slightly, as if looking directly at each viewer. "You have 72 hours to organize a planetary surrender. Lay down all weapons. Gather your populations in designated zones. Resistance will be met with complete annihilation. This is not a negotiation. This is an inevitability." The transmission ended, leaving Earth in stunned silence that lasted perhaps 3 seconds before chaos erupted. News anchors struggled to maintain composure. Government officials issued contradictory statements. Military leaders spoke of impossible defenses. But in Millbrook, Iowa, Marcus Chen simply walked back outside and continued fixing his fence. The next 71 hours and 59 minutes were a testament to human nature in all its forms. Some governments attempted to coordinate surrender protocols. Others defiantly mobilized their militaries in futile gestures. Millions fled cities, while others took to the streets in both panic and protest. Religious leaders proclaimed everything from the end times to divine intervention. Marcus spent the time doing what he'd always done, caring for his land and his animals. He checked his cattle, repaired his equipment, and harvested the late corn when reporters somehow found their way to his farm, drawn perhaps by his inexplicable calm. He politely declined to comment beyond offering them fresh water and directions back to the highway. As the deadline approached, every human on Earth held their breath. The warlord had promised to return for their answer. At precisely 72 hours after his first transmission, Thexvar's image once again filled every screen on the planet. This time, however, he was not alone. The camera pulled back to reveal the interior of his flagship's bridge, where dozens of alien officers stood at attention, their various species united under the banner of conquest. "Humans of Earth," Thexvar announced, his voice carrying the satisfaction of assumed victory. "Your time has expired. I trust your leaders have prepared the appropriate documents of surrender. I will now receive your planetary government's formal capitulation." For a moment, silence stretched across the airwaves. Then impossibly a new feed began broadcasting. It showed not a marble hall of government or a military command center, but a simple farmhouse kitchen. At a worn wooden table sat an elderly man in overalls, his weathered hands folded calmly before him. Marcus Chen looked directly into the camera, into the eyes of an alien conqueror who commanded fleets across the galaxy, and spoke in the same steady voice he used to greet neighbors at the hardware store. "I speak for Earth," he said simply. "And Earth says no." Across the alien bridge, officers exchanged uncertain glances. Thexvar leaned forward, his helmet sensors focusing on this insignificant human who dared respond to his ultimatum. "You misunderstand the situation," the warlord said, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. "I have offered your species the opportunity to serve the hegemony. The alternative is extinction." Marcus nodded thoughtfully, as if considering the merits of different seed varieties. "I understand perfectly. You want our land, our water, our freedom. You want to make us slaves." He paused, glancing toward the window where his cornfield swayed in the afternoon breeze. "But you don't understand us at all." "Enlighten me," Thexvar said, his tone dripping with condescension. Marcus stood slowly, his joints protesting after a lifetime of hard work. "You see a species without unity, divided governments, different languages, constant conflicts. You think that makes us weak." He walked to the window, his silhouette framed against the endless rows of corn. "But you're looking at it all wrong." He turned back to face the camera, and for the first time there was steel in his quiet voice. "We're not divided. We're diverse. Every culture, every nation, every person you're threatening, they all have something different to fight for. A farmer fights for his land. A mother fights for her children. A soldier fights for his brothers. A teacher fights for the future." Marcus smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both gentle and terrifying. "You want to take all of that away from 8 billion people who've spent their entire history learning how to fight for what they love." On the alien bridge, warning lights began flashing. Sensor operators called out readings they couldn't quite believe. Around the globe, human civilization was moving with a coordination that their intelligence had deemed impossible. "Your 72 hours," Marcus continued conversationally, "gave us something we rarely have. A common enemy and time to prepare. Governments that haven't agreed on anything in decades found common ground. Military forces that trained to fight each other started sharing intelligence. Scientists who compete for funding began collaborating freely. Through the flagship's viewports, the first missiles were visible rising from Earth's surface. Not the primitive weapons Thexvar had expected, but something far more sophisticated. Human ingenuity compressed into 72 hours had produced marvels that 3 days earlier had existed only in theoretical form. "You studied our technology," Marcus said, settling back into his chair as explosions began lighting up the alien fleet. "But you didn't study our people. We're the species that looked at the ocean and built boats. We saw the sky and learned to fly. We've been dreaming of the stars since we first looked up at night." The camera shook as the first alien ship fell from the sky, its engines dark, its hull breached by weapons that shouldn't have existed. "Did you really think," Marcus asked, his farmer's hands steady despite the chaos erupting beyond Earth's atmosphere, "that we'd just give up our home without a fight?" As alarms blared across the hegemony bridge and Thexvar watched his supposedly invincible fleet crumble before an aroused humanity, the old farmer's final words followed him into defeat. "Earth says no, and when Earth says no, that means all of us."